Today on the Self Smarter Podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Self Smarter Podcast. I know it may feel like I've been saying this a lot lately, and maybe I have, but today we're going to do things a bit differently, and that sounds like fun.
Hi, we're Danelle and Megan, the hosts of this conversation-centric podcast for leaders seeking to be better every day. Whether you choose to be a leader in the workplace, at home, or in your community, we believe the most effective leaders are equipped to not only be self-starters, but self-smarter.
So today we're celebrating our 20th episode, and I just cannot believe it. In some ways, this podcast journey feels like we just got started, and in other ways, it feels like we've been doing this for years. I wanted to start by just saying thank you to those of you who are on this journey with Danelle, me, and the Self Smarter Podcast production team. If you're committed to becoming self-smarter in your workplace, in your organization, in your home, heck, in your life, and you're on this journey with us each week, thank you. Thank you for listening and doing the hard work with us. Before we start, let me just say that I don't know how we'd make it a day at our company without the help of our trusty IT services partner. Moby Systems has been our IT partner for years, and they keep us connected when computers crash and networks go haywire. The team at Moby is super helpful in understanding of people who don't know what the heck to do when equipment goes south. What I know for sure is that without them, we wouldn't be able to run our business as seamlessly as we do. With Moby Systems in your corner, you have peace of mind that they keep an eye on your company and its IT assets. We're offering our listeners a huge bonus to sign up with Moby Systems. Here's the deal. Our listeners will get their first month's service absolutely free, along with additional goodies. For more information, please visit mobysystems.com. That's MOBE systems.com. And be sure to mention Self-Smarter for your first month free. Okay, let's talk about this celebratory episode. We thought it might be fun if we were to round up some of our favorite moments from our 20th episode. For our 20th episode, rather. And of course, we would love for you to go back and listen to any episodes you might have missed. But if you need a crash course on Self-Smarter, this is a great place to start or to refresh your memory. We hope this episode will encourage you, make you laugh, make you think creatively about your leadership. Listen along with me as we get to relive the top 20 moments from our first 20 episodes. First up, we'll start with the obvious, where it all started and why. Here is Danelle's explanation of why the heck we started this podcast during episode 1.
Colleagues in this industry, I joined a mastermind group, coaching. I've sought a lot of peer-to-peer interaction. And when I start to talk about all that we've gone through the last 8 years, it becomes very obvious to me that, boy, we've learned a lot. And yes, people are struggling with how to be a leader because leaders are not born. Leaders are made, and they're made by a conscious decision to do something different and to be vulnerable. And it requires self-awareness, and it requires you to have a lot of grace for yourself and others. And I think that is the piece that really gave us, starting with myself, working with you and the leadership team, and then ultimately the entire company, to bring this podcast to life that's not about our discipline, our core discipline, which is marketing.
That's right.
Fresh food and good for you foods. I mean, that's what we do every day. But
Yes.
We're doing a podcast based on leadership,
Yes.
which is a component of leaders inside the office
Yes.
and outside the office, and what that looks like. Because I don't want others to have the shock and extreme disappointment of finding yourself in such a poor position that forced. I mean, again, I didn't have to make the decision, but in my opinion, I did. I want there to be a lot more of a proactive steps that people take. So I want to share what our journey looks like over the 8 years so that others can get into more effective leadership positions, because we need it. We need it certainly in the industries we serve. We know that, as being as dedicated and niche as we are as a business, but I see the ripple effect. I see the work that we're doing here is making a difference in the people who work here and even with our clients and peers that I work with. I see the difference it's making, what we're sharing and what we got right and what we got wrong. So, that's why we're doing this. We're taking a big chance on doing something that's kind of out of our lane. But honestly, it's in our lane because we're living and breathing this every day. And I look at the success of this company, and the thing that's catapulted it the last few years is our commitment to development.
And she's right. Being a leader does require great vulnerability, which is a great time for us to transition to this moment from the episode titled The Damn Truth About Vulnerability.
We look for vulnerabilities now in leaders. Like we see it as a strength, whether it's a leader, an athlete, or maybe someone in our personal life that stands up and says, maybe it's someone who's fought an illness and stands up and shares their story, or someone who's experienced great grief or success. Even we look for it in others, but when we look ourselves in the mirror, we run from it. And that's certainly something that I was experiencing prior to this, this approval rating. Was I was carrying so much armor. But when I think back on it, of course I respected the people who could show up and express themselves or share their less than perfect journey, but I wasn't willing to do it myself in that moment. And I was that's something that really stood out to me. So vulnerability is a weakness, but the fact is as we all know now, it's one of our greatest marketers of courage.
Yeah. One of the hardest things I think we've had to learn as leaders is the art of vulnerability. Another hard lesson, believe it or not, that we've had to learn is how to name our emotions. I know this may come as a bit of a surprise, but when we explore Brené Brown's Atlas of the Heart in episode 5, we had the revelation of a lifetime.
When we have more vocabulary and language around our emotions, we can change them for the better because we're aware of what we're feeling. And that was an empowering moment for me, and it's certainly been for the team. And now that we are diving into the emotions, it's clear that it's starting to happen.
Since reading Atlas of the Heart as a business, we have transformed as a group. We are all living in greater awareness of ourselves, and because of this, we are performing better than ever as individuals and as a team. Prior to reading Atlas, we were in a culture conundrum. Let's listen as Danelle talks more about this revelation.
I also learned in this process, and I touched on it a little bit earlier, is that there are no good or bad cultures. There's only strong or weak. You can also say functional or dysfunctional, because there's times where I could see our culture as being weak, and because of dysfunction, we had some dysfunctional things that happening. Yeah. And honestly, when I took the good and bad off the table and I started to see it as weak or strong, I felt empowered as a leader because I know that I can make weak things stronger. Mm-hmm. I know that if we can identify dysfunction and put names to it and language towards it and put examples around it, that we can change it. Because I knew I knew in my heart I wanted to be a better leader, and I knew I wanted this to be an organization where people wanted to come and stay for longer than what they were staying. And I knew that, and so I knew if I could just take each step to make it stronger, that those things would start to fall in line, and this would become more of an organization that was not only financially supporting people, but supporting people in every sense of what a company should be doing, which is in really making your life better because you work here.
There are no good or bad cultures. How many of us can relate to wondering if our culture is good or bad? And then you wonder, according to whom? Let's listen in on how Danelle explains our rebound from being in that conundrum and how our remodel impacted our business. People who are listening, like visually or in my head, when I think about 8 years ago, prior to 8 years ago, I imagine it almost as a zig and a zag. Mm-hmm. In terms of how things worked, because we didn't have the Enneagram. And so I didn't know what your motivations were or what your fears were. And so I couldn't meet you halfway even, right? No. The Enneagram just opened up that window to any given person. Mm-hmm. As long as we all take the test, the assessment internally, we all know. And then now we're a zipper versus a zig and a zag. Now we're a zipper. Mm-hmm. We're working in unison together and folding into this one sort of continuous loop of communication and all working with one another very empathetically based on what your motivations and what your fears are.
Correct.
So it's really become a huge, huge part of our DNA at DMA. And if, again, she's giving a lot of yummy information, I think, in this, and that was the goal of this particular episode. But if you don't hear one thing, hear that. Take the Enneagram. God bless the people who developed the notion of the Enneagram, right? Are you tired of us talking about it yet? I hope not. In fact, if you're listening and you haven't taken the Enneagram yet, what are you waiting for? Let's hear from Danelle on why you should care about the Enneagram in this next clip.
100 examples, and you could give 200 more of those moments that when two people or a group of people are invested in this journey, how it can literally change the dynamic in a moment between two or more people that can put you on just an aggressive path forward, whether that's a personal relationship, a professional relationship, it doesn't matter. And it comes from a place of understanding and choosing to see people for who they are and understanding it enough to, in that moment, be able to direct yourself toward them in a healthier way, and also be able to kind of coach yourself when you're being unhealthy. And the same goes for your relationship with that person. So
right. It really gives you permission to be yourself.
Yes.
The Enneagram. And so when you're taking the test, when you're reading your results, just remember that that's the goal. The goal is to find you. And first, and to help you empathize with others. Seeing people for who they are, that's the key message that we want you to take away from that clip in that episode. By doing this, you not only give others permission to be themselves, but you also give yourself permission to just be you. One of the great things about the Enneagram is the ability to enrich trust within a relationship. It doesn't matter if it's personal or professional. Knowing who you are and who others are simply takes that foggy layer out of the equation, so clear skies of communication and trust are able to thrive. Speaking of trust, let's hear a highlight from the episode on that very topic.
You can't make someone trust you. You can only behave in a way that allows people to trust you. And I think if you start to think about trust as being something that we individually do, it's something we make, we create, we build, we maintain, and often we have to repair it. And I think the most important thing about trust is that it's a cycle of small moments, and it's made up over time. I think we tend to think of trust as being something that is either earned or lost in a big moment.
Yeah.
And the reality is that trust is, it's made up of many small moments. Yeah. And that's when it's the most healthy, quite frankly.
Earning trust is all about living in a cycle of small moments. What a great perception and helpful nugget for us to remember as we're navigating relationships in our lives, you know? Danelle is pretty good about making really tough things easy for us to digest. I'm grateful for that, aren't you? Yes, you are. And I know that's true because the lesson Danelle shared about ankle strength was maybe our funniest moment yet. And thank you to those who told me so. Here's what she said. You have been walking around here for a week talking about a specific body part.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yes, I have.
Okay, so you've got problems with this body part.
No, I had an awakening. I had an awakening
about the body part.
Yeah, so just a little bit of a backstory. I pulled out my back last year, and 49 years old with a Gimp back, I started to realize that I needed to get myself back in shape. And it had been a minute since I'd been in the type of shape where I wouldn't pull out my back. Got back into Pilates and really committed this summer to it. And in that work, in my mind, and I think this is the case for a lot of us, we really pay attention to our knees, our hips. For
arms,
me, my core, because I did not want to have a hot back.
Topics
Yes.
in the Shape magazines.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So there are exercises, though, and my coach would say to me, we've got to work on your ankles.
Yeah, that's a weird thing to say.
I am, until now, was frustrated by the ankle work.
As would I.
Yes, exactly.
You know what we need to focus on? Those ankles.
That's right.
God. You go to Pilates class, 7 o'clock in the morning.
Let me tell you how you can get really focused on ankles is that I was recently hiking.
Yep.
I don't know if they were mountains or big hills.
Big hills.
But it it was steep. I mean, it was probably a hike that I think I was ready. I did pretty well. But I was with two, they're athletes. And so they're friends.
Are you an athlete? Kind of. Not like they are.
No.
I know.
Not
like all due respect.
No, yeah. But I'm.
You're great. Yeah.
I'm in shape, and
yes.
I'm wanting to do these type of hikes. I want to do these type of outdoorsy things, and so we're on the hike, and I remember walking up to one point and saying, "Is that what we're going up?
That big incline?"
That big incline, and they said yes, and so I was like, "Oh my goodness!" And I thought that was the hard part. Well, guess what? Turns out. Going up, while it was difficult for me, I was able to do it. Where the problem set in for me in this particular instance, which was where my awakening happened on the side of, I'm going to call it a mountain because it sounds better.
Yeah, it does.
On the side of the mountain was when I started to go down, and then in one given moment on a loose gravel, I slip.
Oh gosh.
So imagine, and there's maybe this lasted 2-3 seconds, but in that first second, I had already role played the fact that I was going to face plant.
The face plant.
And I just imagined the skin that was going to be removed, and
the
then
rocks.
The rocks. It was not going to be good.
Maybe a cactus in the face.
Well, I don't know if there was any cactuses there. But what I will say is, as I was sliding, something happened.
Okay.
My ankles took over and saved me. My ankle strength, I was able to garner my balance, not fall, and not grab onto anything, including two innocent people that I would have clearly taken down the hill with me, or the mountain. And so anyway, in that moment, I was so grateful for
the ankle work.
The ankle work. And I think we take our ankles for granted.
I do too.
And if you think about how many bones are in our ankles, like there's just we need to be more
vulnerable.
Conscious. They are.
They're very vulnerable.
And they need to be strengthened.
They do.
And we need to bring awareness to it. So I took it upon myself to tell the people that I know and love.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this is like a PSA. Like, I'm excited about my ankle work.
Ankles forever. Y'all, that moment on the podcast was so much fun. And I think the best part was that she saved that story to tell me in that great detail for this episode. So much fun. Speaking of fun, how about the episode where our team took the heck over the podcast and spoke sweet nothings into the microphone about Danelle? Let me tell you something. If you ever want to make someone feel special, just write them a letter and tell them the truth about how you feel. Tell them how much they mean to you and watch the tears fall. Here's a special moment from that episode.
When I was thinking about it, one of the first things that came to mind is how she steps into our lives. I mean, she allows us to come to her first. She wouldn't just show up at a new hire's house uninvited. But once we do give her that green light, she'll step in. And so something that I was thinking about is I got married last May, as you know, and I was just thinking, I don't know how common it is to have the CEO of your company and the president of your company not only at your wedding, but cheering you on every day leading up to that day. I mean, you and Danelle would call and check in on me. I got a text from Danelle the morning of my wedding, got to dance with her that night and take pictures. And I just know how rare that is. And so it's important to me to kind of mirror that leadership in my life. I know there's a lot of leaders who probably think that they can't be friends with the people they're leading because they're afraid that then people will only see them as friends and not a leader. But Danelle has proven that to be the exact opposite for me. I think because she's so important to me and because she stepped into my life in that way, I want to work harder for her and I want to do my best for her because she's no longer just my boss or just a CEO, but she's a friend and an important person in my life. And so I think that's the biggest takeaway, or at least one of my favorite takeaways from lessons I've learned in Danelle, is it's okay to step in and it means a lot to the people on the other end. So I really appreciate that about her.
Okay, leaders, you heard it here first. It is okay to step into your team's lives and get to know them and communicate with them outside the office. So many of us leaders worry about this, don't we? I think Danelle has done a great job at balancing this for the people that welcome her into their personal lives. For me, there's a fine line between leadership and personal relationships. And when I say fine line, I mean a line slightly exists. I feel as though I'm spending my moments awake in this life working with these people most days, so I better make the most of the time for me and for them. I know Danelle feels the same, and because of this approach, y'all, it feels like family around here versus work. Here's another heartwarming moment that I think is important to share.
It's been a lifetime together on this journey at DMA, and just out of curiosity, I knew 17 was above average, but I was curious, so I Googled how long the average person stays at a job, and Google tells me that it's just over 4 years.
Wow.
So that's it's been a huge commitment, but one that felt very natural. And I think even despite our communication challenges and how many times we butted heads over innumerable things, it was very easy to stay because I value more than anything integrity and trust. And I never once had to question that from Danelle. She just has a character that I can stand by, even in the biggest challenges. And I think she feels the same about me. And it's just been a very, I think we've just gotten along well over the years based on that commitment to one another and really understanding who each other is on the inside.
Wow. I love, love, love what Marcy says here. And these are notes for all of us as business leaders. Integrity and character. Something she never questions when it comes to decision her leader has made. She trusts these decisions and this woman, and as a result, Marcy is loyal to her and the business. Woohoo and amen. Okay, we'll share 3 more clips and then we'll wrap it up. But hang tight because these are going to be epic. One of the things I love about diving into the Enneagram and other self-smarter tools is that it not only helps me, but can also help the relationships that I'm in on the daily here in the office and in my personal life. Here's a funny but painfully true clip from our most recent episode with Marcy Allen on understanding our Enneagram wings.
If you are in a very close relationship with someone, maybe you're married, maybe you've got another person who's very close to you in your life, and there's constant tension between the two of you, and that person's always pointing out a trait that frustrates them or brings negative energy to the relationship. And then the test says, here's what you do when you're stressing out.
Like, uh-oh.
You're like, oh, okay.
I've been seen.
It wasn't just their opinion. Like, truly, that must be a behavior that I default to, and I'm not even realizing it, and maybe it's not justified all the time.
Right. Wow. Yeah, that's good. Remember that one time when Danelle said the word bullshit on a stage? Wow. That sure made a ruckus. Here's a clip about that story and what Danelle really thinks about work-life balance. Last weekend, we enjoyed some time with our industry colleagues and saw everyone at a trade show. And you were invited to speak on a panel.
I was very, very honored to be a part of it.
Yes, and it was a women's event.
It was.
And at some point during the event, you were asked a question and you answered in a funny way. Okay, I did not know that. Okay, I did not know that. So I'm setting the stage for our listeners.
I don't know if it was funny.
I didn't go. I didn't get to go. The business needed me and that needed you. And so that's what we did. We divided and conquered. But then the next day, I go to the event and I met a lot of new women on the show floor. And I would just casually ask them, you know, did you go to the event yesterday, the women's event? And of course, 6 out of 6 said yes. It was awesome.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Like, yeah. And I was like, wonderful. Was there any one speaker that stood out to you?
You're checking up. You're literally checking up on me.
I mean, kind of. Because I know you. And I know that sometimes things come out of your mouth on stages that are a bit shocking, but true.
Okay, fair.
Is that fair?
Fair.
Okay. Well, what I would ask people, I would say, was there any one speaker? And they'd say yes. And I would say, well, what was her name? And they were like, well, I can't remember her name exactly because I think it was different, which I automatically knew at that point it's you.
Yes, different name for sure.
Different name. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not like Sally or
Megan.
Joan.
Or Megan.
Or Megan. It's DAN'' Danelle, right? So people have taught. We were used to that.
Welcome to my world.
Danielle, Daniel, like you're called all kinds of things, but it's just good old fashioned Danelle. Anyway, I would say, okay, and what did this person say that really made them stand out to you? Mm-hmm. And they said, well, she said work-life balance is bullshit.
Yes, I did.
6 out of 6 remembered that line, which is what we're going to talk about today.
Okay.
Inspired by your candor at this event, because it did affect people's lives since then. And we can talk about that later. I'll pepper that in. But I know for sure the 6 out of 6 women that I spoke to who did not know you before definitely know you now. And it was the way you described work-life balance being bullshit that we're really going to talk about today.
Yeah, we are. And I mean, I guess thank you for checking up on me. I don't blame you, because it's probably the right thing to do for our business, and to prepare yourself to walk a show floor where you weren't at that particular session, right. And to so that you could understand. But I was stopped a lot. And so I know that this topic, and that's why we're going to talk about the damn truth about work-life balance, because I think me sharing some wisdom that I had garnered through the years about this particular topic, it's, we've been fed a lot. And I think if we can just simply change our mindset about it, we can be freed to feel less frustration, totally. Less shame, less guilt around comparing our life to work. Like, that's really what I want to talk about today. And again, I had a couple of minutes on that stage, but even with those couple of minutes, I could tell by what people were saying to me, and then obviously to you. And I know that it was brought up to others in our organization as well, is that this is something that, in this instance, women, but I know men too,
yes.
struggle
yes.
with this notion of balance. So we thought it would be great to really talk about this today in terms of, this is not necessarily a structured topic.
Right.
This is really largely centered around my opinion and then our experiences. But what we're hopeful is that our listeners can find some, I don't know, relief or inspiration by us sharing what we've learned around this topic that, again, we've been, I don't know what the right word is, but I think the right word is almost fed.
Yes.
And so that's what today's about. I'm excited.
The work-life balance episode, in my opinion, is one of our best episodes yet. If not for anything other than just saying that it doesn't exist and then sitting in that reality for a minute, because like Danelle said, we've all been fed this thing that we're supposed to believe about balance and work life. But how can that be if each of our definitions of work-life balance is so different? So interesting. Okay, to wrap us up for the day, let's listen to this clip about leadership that we uncovered from reading Abby Wambach's incredible little book called Wolfpack,
which are my favorite books, the thin
yes.
ones. And that is an incredible fast read. You can read it in an hour, because the Audible book's, I think, an hour and 10 minutes tops. Yes. And it is a book on an old way of thinking and how to change our mindsets. And it's incredible leadership lessons. It has a lot to do with culture. It has a lot to do. It's definitely geared towards women, but she even says at the beginning of the book that she wants this to be a book for everybody. Right. But she can't help but write it in that particular vein. So it's just a wonderful book that, surprisingly, I thought it was going to be more about her career.
Right.
And of course the stories are in that vein, but the way she tees up these lessons, they're so digestible and memorable that I think this is one of the most underrated leadership books out there. Well, it was, until, of course, Brené Brown literally talked about it and said she feels like it's one of the most influential books that she's ever read. So, and I know that meant a lot to Abby.
I agree.
And so that's the genesis of the book.
Perfect. So those of you that do not know who Abby Wambach is, welcome. She's a soccer legend, a speaker, an activist, and New York Times bestselling author. I hope you all enjoyed going down memory lane with me and possibly picked up on a few things you may have missed during our first episodes. If any of these topics struck a nerve, or we haven't covered one that you are interested in, let us know. We'd be so happy to hear your ideas, because truth be told, we're on this self-smarty journey together, and we love your input to help us get smarter too. Okay, for today's music moment, I thought I'd sing a little solo. Just kidding, y'all. Can you imagine if I just started going into song? I won't do that. But for the music moment, let's end with some tunes that my teenager has introduced me to lately. The smooth tones of lo-fi. Chillax. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week, and we send you off into the week with a grateful heart.
As always, you can connect with us on Instagram and Facebook at Self Smarter Podcasts. You can also leave a rating or review if you enjoyed what you heard today. Not only does this mean so much to us, but it also helps other leaders and future leaders find our community. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us in becoming self-smarter. This podcast is produced by Snacks Media, and music is from a free platform. Well, that is until Brandy Carlisle reaches out to us to write the original score for our podcast. Friends, have a great rest of your day.